The devil lies in the details. If you look at the surface of the number today of the market's performance, we only had two indices in the green today, the IT and the media. We had the large cap down 43 basis points, the mid cap about 10 basis points, small cap down 32 basis points, micro caps up 42 basis points. So on this basis, you will say that it was not a great day for the markets. But like I said, you need to dig deep to understand. Why do I say this? Because if you look at the performance, overnight the situation was very bad with Brent crude at $100 and the war escalating, the Houthis now entering the war versus the Saudis. So all of this had created, and the morning the market started very badly. With the Nifty was a gap down. I think it was about 100, 200 points down started, right? But since then, during the day, the market recovered. It showed strong resilience, and this was across the board, whether it is large cap, mid cap, small cap, or micro cap. All of them started on a bad note but ended on a very good note. So I would like to take these numbers at it and look at it from a very positive frame. The market, I think the reaction over the last couple of days was feeling like an overreaction, and buying has stepped in, right? And the lead for this came from crude itself. Now, Mr. Trump continued a 13 continuous days of attacks against Iran, and not only that, he raised the rhetoric saying he will now attack the Houthis also because Saudi Arabia is a friend of America. So there was apparent escalation, but the market, Brent crude market, has read this very positively in a sense that it expects that now with the American threat to the Houthis, may come down. Or whatever the read, the crude in fact improved 3% today and came down to the 97 levels, right? So this drove, I would say, partly the strong support from the domestic investor base. So let's look at the flows now. FIIs who sold about what was it, some 2,999, 3,000 crores yesterday, stepped up their selling to almost 4,000 crores today. So they increased their selling again because of the overnight negative hangover of crude, but DIIs batted on the front foot today and bought almost 6,000, 5,500 crores and defended the market during the day. So very smart action by the DIIs because the gap down opening saw a lot of the price correction, and a lot of FII selling probably happened in the beginning of the day, and DI stepped in to buy those stocks which turned cheaper. Now, end of the day, like I said, it was only IT which came positive and media to some extent. So all the indices entered negative, but they were all far less negative by the end of the day than the beginning of the day. And since today the microcap index actually delivered positive, I'm inclined to believe that even the needy stepped in with value buying today because of the correction of the last couple of days, stepped in and bought. Now the advance decline ratio today doesn't show a very strong advance of the decline. It's a pretty much balanced advance decline ratio. I think the number was 1,400 versus 1,600. Very balanced, but still selective buying. So which means the micro index ended up positive today. So I would say I would look today beyond the numbers of red and microcap being in green to say that the market demonstrated strong resilience today to both the international situation as well as to FIS selling, and came out with reasonably flying colors, I would say. And since this is the last day of the week, it augurs very well for the beginning for next week. So I am inclined to take a positive spin out of the behavior today. The rest of the indices, the dollar index, the US interest rates, Indian interest rates, currency were all flattish. There's no particular signal from there. Let me end off by just talking to you about some non-market related developments today. So first one was that I think the good news there, Cabinet has approved a 3,000 crore BHAVYA-Rasayan Scheme for the chemical industry, the establishment of chemical parks. So that's good news for the chemical industry. Second, not so great news was the PMI. The private sector PMI, the Purchase Management which HSBC publishes, came out slightly lesser from last month to 54.3 from 57.1. which still above 50 is an expansion mode, but still a little bit of a slowdown in the purchase managing activity. We should take note out. Third is the tariff. On the tariff front, well, the section 301. Now I told you he invoked 338 against Canada, and there was still section 124 and 301 which could still use despite the Supreme Court judgment. So today he used 301 and imposed 10% tariffs on India. Now that in one way good and bad. What is the good part? Good part is that a lot of our competing countries, 43 other countries, China, Vietnam, Thailand, are facing a 12.5% tariff. That's a good. What's not so good? Well, India's 70% of its exports will be subject to this tariff, but we didn't get the textile and apparel tariff rate quota exemption, which was expected. So a bit of good and bit of a bad. A little bit of focus on the fact of the earnings. I will just talk about 3-4 earning highlights today. One was the Shriram Finance, an NBFC, reported a 60% growth in their profit, and their net income also showed a 33% growth, and their NIM actually expanded to 9 from 8%, which is very contrary to a lot of the banks showing a decline in their NIMs, right? So this is one good news on the NBFC sector. The second from the banking sector, the Bank of Baroda, a sharp drop, 72% in profit, but it is because of a one-time, they lost that case in the Gulf about that, Mr. Shetty, the promoter of in our NMC Health, right? So there was a 5,000 crore out of court settlement because of which. Otherwise, if their net interest income rose 9.5% year on year, right? That's the second result. The third result was of Tata Consumer Products, which showed a 28% YOY rise in net profits. So fairly decent numbers. And finally, I want to talk about Hindustan Zinc, which probably because of the byproduct of the product is silver, which has had a fantastic rally over the last year, showed a twofold jump in their net profit to 5,000 crores. So overall, today's set of results were by and large okay and decent. So I'm a bit optimistic now about how next week, but I will do a review of this week by the end of the week, by Monday morning. And then I think we have reasons to believe that the worst in terms of this correction is slightly behind us, but doesn't mean that a bounce back is due, but at least you can say that somewhere further corrections will probably depend on whether Brent crude again restarts its 100 to 110 journey. That's the key risk that you need to worry about. And of course, how the monsoon progresses is also important for next week. And then I think on the 28, 29, you have the Fed policy, which you need to look forward to. Like I said, I'll talk in more detail at the end of my week. Thank you.